Hey everybody, we had a request for a Turnitin video, and this is Turnitin.com. If you're not familiar with Turnitin.com, it's used a lot in English classes. Its original purpose was a plagiarism checker. So it compares it. A student submits a paper, and then it compares that paper to, content on the web, whether they're academic journals, databases, popular news articles. And then it also has like its own paper repository where students have submitted papers in the past, but it compares that original student work from your class to all of these things that exist on the web and checks this paper for plagiarism. Okay. Now, it's not just a plagiarism checker. The best benefit I've always thought of Turnitin.com was really teaching kids how to paraphrase and summarize appropriately and truly understand what plagiarism looks like because they can see the report Turnitin.com generates and therefore really look at the way they're using language, the original sources that the language is coming from, and how they can synthesize the work to make it more of their own. Okay, it also gives you an insight into how they are doing in terms of adapting their language to their own purposes. So, how do you access it? So, first off, it is an extension of Schoology. So, I'm in my Schoology materials and I'm just acting like I'm going to make an assignment, but you have to do it a little bit differently. So, you go into Add Materials. Since Turnitin is kind of an extension of Schoology, you go to Add File, Link, External Tool. It's an external tool, so you click that. The drop-down menu at the top provides you with all the possibilities of all these tools, and this one actually is called Feedback Studio. Turnitin, click that. Provide the title for your assignment. I'm saying I do want to grade it. I'm going to grade it eventually, so I'm going to give it a due date, just like I would any other assignment, my categories, et cetera, et cetera. If I want to add in a rubric at this point, I also can. I can go ahead and submit. Now it's just going to look like an assignment. I haven't activated really those Turnitin elements yet, so I got to go find my assignment from my list, click on it, and here's where I can really activate those Turnitin.com features. Okay, so if I want to add additional instructions there, I can. If I wanted to do a peer review, where students would be getting another person's draft and giving them feedback on it, that's where I would use Enable Peer Mark. And that can be kind of nice and remote, where you can still have students collaborate or review each other's papers digitally. So you could click Enable Peer Mark here if you wanted to do that. And then these optional settings are the stuff that's really important for Turnitin. Okay, so I mentioned in the beginning, Turnitin does store papers unless you tell it not to. And what that means is that it's building a database of papers so it can compare new submissions to old submissions to see if anybody's borrowing an old paper. Now, there are issues with intellectual property and rights to that intellectual property with Turnitin. They've gotten a lot of guff about this. So you can opt to not store the paper because the problem is that Turnitin really then becomes the owner of the paper and blah, 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 blah. You know, who owns the intellectual property. So if you don't want it to go into that repository, you can certainly click do not store the paper. All right. I always allow submission of any file type because that's just easier. Who wants to try to navigate those waters? I allow for late submissions. They also provide some really good guides next to the question mark if you ever get lost. If you allow for late submissions, that lets whomever catch up whenever. In the last 2 years, I started using the ETS E-Rater so kids could get grammar feedback. And man, this is a pretty good one. So when they submit, not only will they get the plagiarism report, but they'll get a pretty decent grammar check. Okay, if I want to attach a rubric here, I can. And if you click it, you're going to find that there's a significant cache here of rubrics that you can access. Okay. Again, you can compare against that paper repository. I omitted that this time, but also website content, whether it's current or archived, and then journals, etc. Now, I again want my students to be able to see the similarity report because that's the part I think is the most important. So I want it to generate the reports immediately, and I want also for the kids to be allowed to resubmit until the due date. So they see the error and then they can constantly resubmit so that they can better the essay. So the notion of not keeping them in the repository kind of becomes important here because it can be problematic if a student is submitting the same essay over and over again and the essay is now in the repository. It's going to look like it's 100% plagiarized. So you want to keep that in mind, all right? It can slow down after the person resubmits 3 times, but it doesn't slow down. The warning is a little greater than necessary. Okay, I also want to exclude bibliographic materials. That way the citation, an article title, I can't paraphrase an article title. So that if I don't say exclude bibliographic materials, it is going to say, this article title or in this encyclopedia name looks like it is plagiarized. I also want to exclude quoted materials, and it will only exclude quoted materials if they are punctuated correctly, which is also kind of nice because it reiterates what correct punctuation of quoted materials looks like, and excludes small sources, right? The reason I want to do this is because, like, if I have a kid writing about school violence and they are citing Columbine High School, well, Columbine High School is a very frequently referenced title, and that can trigger that plagiarism report to every time they say Columbine High School to pull those up. So I'm going to say, I don't want you to compare for those small sources, and I get to define what small is once I check exclude small sources. And I'm going to say 4 words. If they're 4 words strung together, that's probably fine. Okay, but once you get to 5, then it's going to get, that's a little bit too much. Okay, I can also indicate if I want to save these settings for the future, so I don't have to go through this every time. So that saves the assignment. And now on my end, that's pretty much done. This is what my inbox looks like as the teacher. There's nothing here yet. What's most important is to see it from the student side. So let's go ahead and have a look at the student side. Okay, so now we're on the student side. So when the assignment comes in, it's obviously listed over on the calendar. Okay, so I can see that it's upcoming. I click on it and it's going to ask me to upload my submission. When I click upload, I can either pull it from my hard drive or I can pull it from Google Drive. I can also copy and paste it directly into the text submission. So here's what we got. I'm going to go ahead and upload it from my computer. I have one saved there, and I'm going to try this one, sample essay 2. Upload, and then it's going to ask me to review. This process does take a little bit, so when you get those 3 thinking dots, just give it a second. I'm going to click turn it into submit it to Turnitin, and then submission's complete, and I can X out of this window. This is what the student will see. Okay, now eventually there will be a grade since it's a graded assignment, and a similarity report will generate. Okay, now that takes a second. So if I just go through and click refresh, I will eventually get that similarity report. And oh, it is there. All right, so I'm going to click on this. When I click on the 67%, now it's going to produce my results. All right, I'm going to move this over here. So there's several layers, and if I click here, I see the layers. There's the similarity report, and then there's the E-rater report. Okay, so this is the grading, and I like to tell kids to look at them one at a time. So I'm just going to focus on the similarity report. Now you'll remember that I said 4 words or less, but this is it's pulling it together since all these words are so close together. When I click on this number, this is telling me where my sources are coming from. As I scroll through, you'll see the parts that are highlighted are the parts that are in question, okay? So this one I can see as an English teacher is a punctuation issue. Okay, and that it's a teachable moment here for that punctuation. Okay, so these little bits are the parts that are coming up as possible plagiarism. Now, what I know is this was a song analysis essay, and I made kids turn in the lyrics. So here you have the lyrics are what's pulling up as really the plagiarism piece. It's not that big of a deal, I should say. I want to go back and turn on the layers for the grading or the like kind of grammar check and have the student look at that. All right, so they can go through and really work on um, some of those grammar pieces. Now, what's helpful here is that a student sees where their language may or may not be too close to that original language and is bordering on unintentional plagiarism. There is the one danger here is that since the crux of what's coming up as plagiarized is from the lyrics, there's not really a whole lot of problematic material in terms of plagiarism. And I don't want to, give a sense of give a kid a false sense of security and say, oh, you must be in really great shape. And then they are going to say, well, I and turn it in, I was in good shape. So why didn't I get a good grade? You just always have to reiterate that, just because it's not coming back as problematic doesn't mean it's perfect. But this is how the student sees it. Turnitin, of course, can be used in like a gotcha fashion. That was kind of how it was originally built to catch kids who are cheating. But the real benefit, the real good stuff, comes from when they can see this before they submit and realign their thinking regarding um, regarding plagiarism in their work. So we are more than happy to help you with any other elements. If you have any questions about Turnitin, be sure to let us know. Take care, y'all.